Welcome back to Ranch Beat, where every country song has a story, and we tell it. I'm James, and today we're going to do something a little quiet but powerful. We're going to listen for darkness. Which is to say, we're going to talk about minor keys and modal color, those little tonal moves that make a chorus feel like a confession, or a bridge feel like a turning point. Stick with me, and by the end, you'll have a simple listening habit you can use on any record. Okay, right now I'm going to hum a short major-sounding chorus, and then I'll hum the same line with a minor twist. Listen closely and notice what you feel. A brighter, major-sounding phrase. Then hums a version with a darker, minor-tinged turn. Which one made you want to cry? Which one pulled you closer? Now here's where it gets interesting. That emotional change can come from a single note or chord choice, no extra lyrics needed.
That hook was the whole episode in 30 seconds. Today's promise? Learn one repeatable habit. When a chorus or line shifts, try to name the scale move, and we'll walk through 3 case studies so you can practice.
Fast overview. What do we mean by minor or modal in plain language? Think of major as the familiar daylight version of a melody. It feels resolved, often hopeful. Minor or modal colors are like dusk or fog. They introduce a small uncertainty, a lilt of danger, a private sorrow. For our habit, listen for a lowered third or a borrowed chord that darkens the phrase. That's the tonal signal doing storytelling work.
And quick note for non-musicians, we'll avoid heavy theory, no equations. Instead, I'll give simple listening cues. That third sounds flat compared to the rest, or the chorus gets a little bluesy, so you can practice by ear.
Now, let's roll this back to the beginning. History and context. How did minor tonalities enter country music? It's not a modern invention. Appalachian folk and ballad traditions carried modal scales across the Atlantic. Old hymns and fiddle tunes often lived in modes where that lowered third or flattened seventh was normal. Over time, Nashville and other scenes learned how to use that color to signal danger, longing, or moral weight.
Here's the short arc. Rural and folk traditions handed modal melodies to early country players. Producers and arrangers in studios later borrowed those colors deliberately. By mid-century, artists used minor leanings for confessional ballads. The arrangement would lean sparse to let the tonal color speak. Different regions used it differently. Appalachian and Scots-Irish lines favored modal vamps, while Nashville might employ a single borrowed chord to darken a chorus for radio.
Case Study 1, the classic minor ballad. Picture a mid-century recording. Sparse guitar, maybe a mournful steel, the singer close to the mic. That lowered third shows up in the verse, and it makes the confession in the lyric feel inevitable. Before this was a hit, it was just an idea. Strip back the arrangement, let the melody breathe, and that minor lean turns ordinary lines into a truth-telling moment.
Concretely, the cues to listen for are simple. Listen for a note that sounds a little flat compared to what you expected. That's often a lowered third. If the arrangement is sparse, that note will stick out more. Also notice how session players place their fills. A restrained fiddle double or a pedal steel sliding into that note makes the whole line read as regret or remembrance.
Case Study 2, the 90s radio shade. Many 90s singles were built for radio brightness, but a clever songwriter or producer would darken the chorus so the hook hit with a twinge. You'd get a pretty verse, then the chorus would shift with a borrowed chord or a modal vamp that reframed the lyric. The label might have raised an eyebrow. The label hated it, the fans loved it. But that tonal shift is what made the chorus stick emotionally.
From a production standpoint, the change is often sold by doubling in compression. The chorus might add low strings or a swelled synth under a guitar that emphasizes the minor interval. On radio, that contrast gives listeners something to latch onto between verses. If you want to confirm it yourself, check the credits for arrangers or string players. They often show up where the color changes.
Case Study 3, modern modal pivot. Contemporary country pop loves to blur lines. A song might sit mostly in a major palette, then the bridge uses a Dorian or Phrygian leaning vamp to give the last chorus a decisive, bittersweet twist. Producers use modal vamps as emotional pivots. That repeated chord pattern becomes the song's secret voice, and suddenly the lyric that looked straightforward has a darker subtext. Next time you hear a pop country chorus that feels both catchy and quietly haunted, now you'll never hear this song the same way again.
Let me add one thing to that. The people who make these moves are a team. Songwriters can suggest the melody, but arrangers, session players, and producers choose the exact voicing and placement. A pedal steel player deciding to slide into that second note, or a producer adding a low synth pad under one line. Those choices are the unsung storytellers.
So who's behind the move? Quick checklist you can use when researching a record. Songwriters, producer, arranger, session players listed in liner notes or databases. Look for interviews where producers talk about color or vibe. They're often the ones to confess, "We borrowed that chord from an old hymn." That's the sourcing path, not gossip, but craft-focused research.
And for credits, public databases, artist websites, album inserts, and reputable interviews are your friends. We'll include show notes with a few sample links so you can follow up without chasing rumors. Most of these claims are verifiable, which addresses our first risk, overstating theory without backing it up.
Music notes for non-musicians. Jargon-light listening cues. First, third versus major third. If a key feels sadder, compare a note against the rest of the melody. That slightly flattened third creates that sadness. Second, modal vamp. A repeated pattern that doesn't resolve the way you expect, like a looped question. Third, borrowed chord. A chord that doesn't belong to the song's home key but appears briefly and changes the color. And fourth, mix placement. Low, warm instruments like a bowed cello or pedal steel can make a minor note feel enormous. To demonstrate without using copyrighted clips, James will sing short, license-free demos that illustrate each cue. No technical notation, just sound and description. James, whenever you're ready. Sings a short phrase, showing a major third, then repeats with a lower third. This one shows the third difference. You can hear how tiny moves change the conversation of the song.
Nice and simple. Now, Listening Lab. This is license-free practice you can do with songs in your library. 3 prompts, timed 1 minute each. Prompt 1, pick a song you know well and listen to the chorus. Does it feel brighter or darker than the verse? Describe the feeling. Prompt 2, listen for a note that sounds off or flat relative to the rest. That's probably a lowered third or borrowed tone. Prompt 3, name the emotional effect. Does the tonal color add regret, menace, longing, or something else? We'll wait a minute between each prompt, so you can try it now.
For about a minute, then softly prompt the listener to move to the next exercise. If you're driving or multitasking, you can do this in your head. The habit works as much on imagination as on headphones. When you get comfortable, try this on an album front to back and track how often tonal color shifts change the story.
Drama and sourcing notes. Sometimes key choices cause studio discussions. A producer wants radio polish. The songwriter wants raw honesty. We've seen cases where an arranger fought to keep a modal passage because it felt true. We'll cite those stories in the show notes rather than dramatizing them here. That handles 2 of our risks. We avoid unverified gossip, and we stay accurate on technical claims.
Wrap up. The one habit to walk away with? When a line hits you differently, name the move. Say to yourself, is that a lowered third, a borrowed chord, a modal vamp? Naming it makes the tonal color a line of dialogue in the song. It turns mystery into craft, and that changes how you listen forever. So that's the setup. Next time you hear a chorus that gives you goosebumps, you'll know why.
Before we go, if you liked this episode, please subscribe to Ranch Beat, rate the show, and tell us which song you want decoded next. Any country song except Thailand. Drop a comment or send us a message with a song that has a tonal twist you can't stop thinking about, and we'll put it in the listening lab.
Thanks for listening. Ranch Beat, where every country song has a story, and we tell it. I'm James. Sam, take us out.
Thanks. I'm Sam. See you on the next one. Keep listening and keep naming those moves.